Hari
Hari
Om.
Om.
Good evening to all. Today is our day 23, and it is also the beginning of a new chapter, chapter 26, the goal of perfection. So let's begin this chapter with prayers.
समस्त जन कल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम् ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ हरि ओम्.
Animals don't need religion. Our Gurudev has said, religion is not for animals. Although one may find many similarities between man and animal, there is one unique difference between them. Animals are bound to their nature. They are instinctive. Humans alone have the capacity to overrule his innate nature and therefore intuitive. Animals accept their instinctiveness while humans question and inquire. We humans have the capacity to change, the capacity to improve, to evolve into his pristine glory. In the work that we are going to read today, there is one particular word, poignant, which means a keen sadness or a regret. So let us now start our reading, chapter number 26, the goal of perfection achieved.
The goal of perfection achieved. Religion is not for animals. It is essentially that which answers a special demand which fully grown man alone makes in life. What is religion? Religion answers a special demand that there are no philosophies or religious ritualism in the world of flora and fauna. Seems to be one of the wondrous and the intelligent looking arguments of guided atheists. We have explained the word atheist before. Those who do not believe in the existence of God. When they justify their reluctance in accepting religion. There are among men those who have come up to only the animal level in their inner evolution. When in any generation the majority is of this type, there will be a greater rejection of the higher values of life, and the very question of supreme would become unfashionable, almost insufferable. If we go back in the world history and see the 1930s, 40s, 50s, in the West, people had become like that. They just discarded religion totally, completely. Their outlook was completely towards the world, material, not inwards. The greater the integration within, the higher the individual's mind and intellect can fly. And the vision of the prospect below extends itself into greater distances when the observer is raised to a greater altitude. The greater the heights from which we look around, the wider is the prospect that unrolls under our gaze. Naturally, when we are flying in air, we can see so much more of Mumbai. When integration has taken place sufficiently, the individual comes to recognize and feel a nauseating disgust at the mere life of acquiring and keeping, earning and hoarding, eating and wasting, sleeping and breeding, growing and dying, and he seeks and thirsts to discover in life a greater mission and a nobler purpose. Remember, actually, the four personalities, and continuously Gurudev has been hinting, Shastra hints on the integration of the four. So, this particular paragraph was indicated to those people whose personalities have begun to integrate. They start feeling this kind of emotion. He gains the capacity to look beyond the walls of his own house, beyond the streets of his own village, beyond the demarcation of his province, even beyond the frontiers of his own nation. He perceives in one dim look the entire life as it is available among men, and he includes in his conception of life the manifestations of it in the animal and the vegetable kingdom of existence as well. So, not just he starts thinking of mankind from I and my, he has become to us, and in his us feeling, he has included everything, even the plant kingdom and the non-existing, or you can say as insentient stones and other objects. With this universal vision of the subtle mind, when the seeker in the fully grown man comes to examine life as a whole, in his clarity and perception, he comes to see their dynamic stage through which life makes its pilgrimage. At once emerge out of the stage of life endless numbers of beings throbbing with life, make an exit by the opposite side in their constant death. From the towers of the intellect, chastened and purified through any one of the process of the self-integration, when such an individual comes to recognize this phenomenon, he is embarrassed with a tragic and a poignant, painful despair, almost amounting to a chaotic confusion.
I think here it is very well explained that once we start evolving within us, that time we recognize this cycle of life and death. We start observing in us and all other creatures around us also that there is constant birth and then constant dying. And this becomes a cycle and repetition.
And so beautifully, Sri Guru Adi Shankaracharya has said in his Bhaj Govindam, Punarapi Jananam, Punarapi Maranam, Punarapi Janani Jathare Shayanam, Ihu Samsare Bahudustare, Krupaya Pare Pahi Murare. Only a self-integrated person can come to these thoughts. At this stage of self-confusion, when he feels the problem to be too much beyond himself, he begins to make a closer study of his own earlier conclusions. That, the beautiful poem. Rashi, why don't you read this poem for me?
Life of a man is arrow's flight, out of darkness into light, and out of darkness into light again, perhaps to pleasure, perhaps to pain. R.H. Stoddard. R.H. Stoddard was an American poet in the 19th century. He has not had, of course, the Vedantic education, but in his poetry you will find that he's always referring to this consciousness. He's always referring to life and death and the cycle of life and death, and he feels that he lives in two worlds and that there are chains which are binding him down, and how he's striving to get out of this bondage. So Gurudev over here has written his poetry also, speaking about out of darkness into light, that is from our ignorance into the light of knowledge.
How beautiful. If life is thus a meaningless madness in which we are all to sing a song of sorrow and slipping through stupidities, must end our pilgrimage from the womb to the tomb, then nature has gone off her nuts and she is to be considered a dangerous lunatic. It would be a wasteful extravagance on the part of the Creator if this entire scheme of the universe were a meaningless humdrum of chaos and confusion, of strifes and struggles, all taking us nowhere but to the cold embrace of the grave.
It cannot just be that all this creation, all this life is for no meaning, just for us to be merry and live our lives, then to get old and deceased, and then just go into our graves. I mean, God, the greatest creator, has done all this. It would be so wasteful to think of it in these terms. So obviously this is not it, and there is much more meaning behind all of this.
This is what you were trying to point out in the beginning, that the animals have accepted this life, that born, eat, breed, and old age and death.
So not just animals, but animal-like people also.
Only men who are now coming close to the evolutionary completion will start thinking of this, should start thinking of this. This is what is spoken earlier, ahead over here. If life is thus meaningless,
Okay.
so that is what we have completed our speaking now. On the contrary, our rishis of old viewed life as one with the highest potentialities for perfection. If Darwin only visualized a greater and nobler stage of supermanhood, according to the rishis, this supermanhood or godhood can be achieved by man in this very life through an intelligent process of self-integration and meditation.
So while in the West it would be considered that life is just you take birth and then you die, but our rishis in the Vedantic education have told us that no, a man can go and reach his highest state of evolution through a process which is intelligent of integration and meditation.
In their view, truth or their reality, in their view means the rishis, in their view, truth or reality is one and all pervading in its absolute nature, and therefore they conclude that life must be the basis of everything perceivable in nature. Thus they found that in all layers of life among the living beings and the existing things, life or truth expresses in varying degrees and in different languages. On the basis of this expression of life, the various equipment constituted of the names and forms in the world were divided into four groups. A. The inert stone life. B. The plant life. C. The animal life. And D. The man life. In all these four layers of varying degrees of life, they tried to see the expressions of it in the sense of life.
Yes, so whatever that exists around us in the material form, which has a name and a form, everything that has a name and a form has been divided into these four categories.
We move ahead. Thus, they found that life in the inert stone just expresses itself as existence, while when we come to the plant life, we see life has started expressing itself through their developed equipment in terms of a vague awareness of the outer world. Coming to the manimal life, we find that they, compared with the plants, are enjoying a greater awareness of the happenings without, perhaps to some extent, at least in some of them, a vague awareness of the happenings within. But in the finest equipment of man, we find the largest of amount of awareness or consciousness expressed, not only illuminating clearly and vividly the world without, but with equal clarity the world within also. So, the stone, in the stone life, existence, like on the other day we were speaking, the stone exists, the plant exists, the animal exists, we exist, this table exists, that photo exists, that mobile, everything is existence. So life is expressing as existence in stone. When we go slightly ahead, what happens? Plants are reacting to the world a little. How? They take sunlight. They react to the moisture which comes from the ground. Animals, we have seen that they have an mind and intellect, but not sufficiently.
Yeah, and they can move around.
They can move around. But they can't distinguish between the right and wrong, or the real and the unreal. This is the pure privilege of human intellect.
So it is existence which binds us all. And this existence is of the Creator. He has created this existence. And especially you will recognize it that in Hindus, or I can say those who come from the Sanatan culture also, even when our foot by mistake touches even a wooden object which is inert, insentient, or even a book which is lying down over there, it may not necessarily be a scriptural book, maybe just a story book, but when our foot touches anything, our instinct is to ask for forgiveness. Or, we have this
habit of saying sorry.
Of doing this. So this is because we recognize that as it is created by God, it is of divine nature. So this is what we instinctively do and have learned through generations.
Thus, when we view nature, we understand that beneath the superficial contentions of name and forms, the confusion of values and the complications of problem of life runs a scheme silently fulfilling itself. To complete this scheme, therefore, should be the grand aim of life. From the lowest evaluates to the member of the highest grade developed, there is at every stage a greater expression of consciousness, and therefore to realize that in itself, if it is possible, would be the peaceful and perfect, the dynamic and the divine goal of existence.
How beautifully put, how well put. I don't think anybody can express better than this.
Know thyself. In order that our mind and the intellect, body and its objects may be driven to its self-discovery, to be fully aware of the pure consciousness center in ourselves, we have appeared in the field of activity with the sorrows of life, the limitations of power, the imperfections of the world are all encouraging whips that make us run on the road and reach our goal earlier. The greater our identification with the matter envelope, the greater our sorrows. To detach ourselves through right understanding and correct discrimination from those with which we have no connection is to reach ultimately the pure and the eternal self in us. If a progressive liquidation of the perceived plurality is thus possible as we view the pluralistic world from the deeper and subtler layers in ourselves, it appears clear that there must be a still subtler fact in ourselves from the gates of which we shall have the vision of the all-pervading divine oneness in which love and charity are as natural as hatred and sorrow are ours today.
As we become aware of the divinity within us, as we become a witness to see that the outside world is separate from what we feel inside, our evolution has begun. And then we see that we are starting to feel happier inside and distant from the sorrows that we are associated with in this world. In the earlier paragraph, it is said and explained how beautifully we can even take the sorrows that come into our life as a whip, which tells us to run faster so that we reach our goal faster too.
Lovely. It is really very beautifully articulated, and it is so beautifully explained to us that anything and everything that comes in our life, if our vision, if our goal is clear in life, it will help you to move towards that. Shall we move ahead? Life is one. A beginning is considered. I beg your pardon. A being is considered to be living when it is conscious of the outer world, or both the outer and the inner world. Therefore, to live consciously is to fully live the life that is one without a second, everywhere, throbbing in and through the different equipment in different degrees of experiences. This particular word, Rajshree, which Gurudev has mentioned, that is one without a second. This is a direct translation of the word Advaita. The Vedanta that we are speaking of is called Advaita, one without the second. It is the philosophy whereby it is proclaimed that the entire universe, everything, names and beings and everything, is nothing but one consciousness. The purer the mind and lesser the number of agitations, the greater is the consciousness that beams out through such an individual, and he is a prophet, a saint, or a sage who gathers unto him the world of beings in the compelling embrace of love. Then he comes to experience and live entirely in unison with the sacred life as expressed through the multiple equipments all around the universe in terms of conscious awareness. He is a God-man. His state is the super manhood. Such a man, call him Krishna or Christ, Muhammad or Mahadev, Buddha or Shankara, Vivekananda or Dayananda, Ramana or Arvindo, appears on earth to lead and guide his generation from time to time. Gurudev has mentioned the great stalwarts of this particular knowledge, the knowledge of oneness, brilliantly, right starting from Krishna to Sri Aurobindo.
And he has also mentioned about the Darwin's theory, which we know Darwin was that biologist scientist who had the theory of evolution, that man has started to evolve from an animal into a human being, a tailed animal, and then he loses his tail. We will all remember that. And if that theory were to be considered, then man would at some point become a superman. And then this is what Gurudev is also explaining, that such men who actually were, in a different way we can call them supermen, were called Krishna or Christ or Muhammad or Mahadev, or all of these saints who were there. When they reached that state of evolution, they guided that particular generation and gave knowledge to those particular generations to live their life well.
The only difference in Darwin's theory was he thought human being will change into superhuman, like a bodily change. Where Gurudev is saying this is possible in our way that we are, just by integrating all the four personalities. With the magic of his love and the strength and sharpness of his wisdom, he tries to erase the animalism in man and to lift the entire generation to a higher pedestal of peaceful coexistence in a web of mutual love and understanding. We have some time. So, shall we move ahead?
Sure.
By this time, you have understood Gurudev has explained so wonderfully that if at all humans, we, I, want to evolve, I must turn my attention from the external world to the internal and start observing the personality which are splitting my thoughts, which are splitting my energies into four. The next continuation is beautiful. Rise and fall of man. If, as we said earlier, consciousness or awareness is our real nature, and that evolution is completely fulfilled when we rediscover this state, then we must certainly seek the path by which we can regain this lost status of perfect bliss. When one gets lost in a jungle, the surest, if not the easiest, path to return to the familiar grounds is to retrace one's steps. In order to go back to the pristine glory of our real nature, it will be easy for us if we investigate and discover the probable mistakes by which we have tumbled down into this dark well of sorrow and finitude. We, from the state of transcendental glory, from that nature of knowledge bliss, have fallen to be men, limited, ignorant, sad mortals. How this seeming fall has taken place is a necessary knowledge so that we may know our path to return to our own home. Vedanta does not accept any real fall in man from the reality. The Upanishads are never tired of repeating the assertion, "Thou art that." In Sanskrit it is Tat Tvamasi. It is one of the Mahavakyas. Yet you and I are feeling our separate existence, our weaknesses, our sorrows, our limitation. It is always our bitter experience of the duality about us. The phenomenal world is evident, and minute to minute it is experienced by us. And today we will take a break here. But tomorrow we are going to focus on these aspects once again. The rise and fall of man. Because this is where we are going to find out the path back to our origin.
Yes. So let us end this session with wonderful prayers.
Asito ma satgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma mrutam gamaya. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.